morning, everybody. Rich Cawthorn here at Alpha Pension Group. Welcome to our daily review of what's going on in the retirement plan world. With me is Keith Killian, our operations director, Mark Salamone, our lead consultant, and one of our education consultants, Dave Bradshaw. Today, we're going to start talking about the CARE Act. There's pending legislation to try and help small businesses, large businesses, and the retirement plan population try to navigate what's going on here with COVID-19. The legislation is called the CARE Act, and Mark has done a lot of research here over the weekend to tell us about it. I know it keeps changing, ebbing and flowing, and hasn't yet passed. But Mark, why don't you give us an update as to where we stand right now, Monday morning, the 23rd of March?
Obviously, they are attempting to do everything they can to allow for people to, if they're losing their jobs or in danger of losing their jobs, have options to maintain their financial standing and to pay their bills. And currently, they have the CARES Act, which right now has not gone through and is right now still being debated. But it's a 247-page bill, and CARES is an acronym for Coronavirus Relief and Economic Security Act, and it provides for direct cash payments and loan guarantees for impacted businesses. So they're going to try attempt to do cash payments to people and married couples as long as you're within a certain income range. Small business loans, they're going to attempt to do that for small businesses that have less than 500 people on their payroll. They can apply for free loans up to $10 million. They're going to try to do industry-specific loan guarantees. So the industries mostly affected right now are obviously travel, anything with hotel and leisure. Those are the major ones that are going to be looking for loans, along with a host of other ones like restaurants and other places. Healthcare, they're going to require the FDA to prioritize and expedite the review of new drugs and a host of other things. They're also going to talk about student loans, allowing for people to defer payments on their federal student loans. Obviously, which will be good for newly graduated people that are now looking for a job or potentially have one and have this high debt to go along with it.
So what I read was that this was getting caught up because they couldn't really get, an agreement about the small business part of that, which I think this is the whole genesis of this is if you can keep small businesses propped up, then, that's going to be far more effective than just giving everybody $2,400 or whatever the amount is. So what is the small business part? That's the part I'm really curious about. Loans, interest only loans, and I'll ask one last question, then I'll stop here. But why wouldn't they suspend like payroll tax or something like that? I don't see any action there. And it seems to me if you can keep those small businesses going, then payroll will keep running and we can all get through this. We all see that this is a finite time. We don't know when it is, but we've got to keep those small businesses going.
Yeah, the difference right now between one side of the aisle and the other is that one side of the aisle wants to expand unemployment so that you're really just replacing a salary. You're not actually doing
Democrats?
That. What's that?
The Democrats want to do that?
Yes.
What side of the aisle? Yeah, okay.
Yep. And the aisle and obviously the Republicans who have written the bill are looking to be able to make cash payments to people. So direct cash payments, between $1,200 and $2,400, depending on your situation. And then also trying to make sure that, these loans are available to small businesses. I don't think there's any disagreement on the loan part of it. I think it's how do you affect the folks that are going to lose their job either way.
Do you have any details about the loan part? Do they have any details about that?
The loans part, they don't really go into much detail on. They go into a lot of detail on the student loan part. There's also a part of this legislation that impacts retirement plans specifically. So hardship distributions, the CARES Act waives Code Section 72T, which is an additional 10% tax on early withdrawals. So participants under this CARES Act get up to $100,000 from their retirement plan or an IRA. And they'd have to meet certain conditions. The 4 conditions would be either you're diagnosed with COVID-19, you have a spouse or dependent that's diagnosed with COVID-19, that you experience adverse financial consequences of being quarantined, laid off. I mean, this is going to apply to a lot of people. And last but not least, other factors as determined by the Treasury Secretary. So they have a miscellaneous thrown into that part as well.
And who has to figure that out? Plan administrators? What a joy.
Yeah. This is the beauty of new legislation. They write it and say, here you go, figure it out.
Yeah, we got to figure out how to help our clients figure out not only how to interpret that, but if they need to process these things, we should talk with our inside team here to figure out a process, because you can't put all that work on the human resource or administrator of the plan. That's just ridiculous.
Is the exact language people who are adversely affected by this, like the third point you made? Can you repeat that? Because it sounds like everybody would fall under that category.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, they really do put it pretty broadly. So people who experience adverse financial consequences as a result of being quarantined. Adverse financial consequences such as a result of being furloughed, laid off, having work hours reduced, being unable to work due to lack of childcare due to COVID-19, closing or reducing hours of a business owned or operated by the individual due to COVID-19.
And what proof of need are people supposed to furnish to get this sort of thing approved? We don't, none of this, right?
So new, we don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it does go on also. So the CARES Act also allows more plan loans. So as we know, currently the plan loan rules are that you can get up to half your balance, up to $50,000. This would double that limit up to $100,000 or 100% of the person's vested account balance in the plan. So that's essentially letting everybody take their 401k balance, use it today, and allow them to pay it back to their retirement plan via a loan. So individuals with any outstanding loan from their plan with a repayment due from that date of reenactment of the CARES Act, December 31st, 2020, can delay their loan repayments for up to 1 year.
So say that again. So if you take a loan, a new loan, you can delay the payments for 12 months?
Correct.
That's
correct. From the date you take the loan, and you have until the end of this year to take the loan under this CARES Act. As far as plans having to amend to be able to allow for these two things, so the hardships loans, you adopt these rules immediately, even though the plan does not currently allow for hardships or loans. As a result of this law, you would be able to do it, would not have to amend the plan. I take that back. The plan would have to be amended on or before the last day of the first plan year, beginning on or after January 1st, 2020.
So they have to amend their plan, a simple loan amendment to take advantage of this. That's not a big deal.
Correct.
Yeah, right. I mean, we got to tell people that they need to do that and help them do it, but that's actually, usually with loans, as you know, it's they're trying to make sure people have to go through a couple of hurdles to take loans. Culturally, this is shifting to say, not only can you take double the amount that you previously could, you can defer the payment on that loan, and we're going to make it easy for your plan to amend. So that's sort of a big deal. So this CARES Act, this is, to be clear, this is what's being kicked around right now and was supposed to pass this weekend, but hasn't. But we do think, any indication, Mark, as to when you think this would go through? I know there's a big meeting in Congress this afternoon.
I would think sooner rather than later. I would not know exactly when, clearly, but I think, the more you wait, the longer you wait, the more unsettled the market is. And I think people need the money now. And the idea and the spirit of this legislation is to not have to put any, obstacles in the way that people get access to their retirement money. So I'm assuming that this would be coming down the road shortly.
I'd be shocked if not tomorrow at the latest.
Yeah. And the markets need this. Right now, the futures are down 600 points when I last saw it. We have an hour before it opens, but we need to stabilize the markets. And, how you do that is giving small business owners some hope and a lifeline. I mean, again, getting some money to people, $1,000 or $2,400, whatever it is, that'll help, but that's not sustainable. Like, what happens next month, right? Propping up small businesses is imperative. And again, there's been no talk about payroll tax or anything like that. I know that sounds maybe trivial, but we own a business, Mark, right? We have 25 employees, right? If we could suspend or delay payroll tax, that could be a big deal.
But that's, Rich, that is part of, when I was reading what's holding it up, I mean, it's what the big corporations are going to get out of it, but the small business bailout is, so the loans that they're going to guarantee or they're going to give small businesses like ours are great, but the second piece of it is how are you going to repay it? Is your business going to grow incrementally to give you that flexible income to be able to repay those loans? Because they've done this in the past before, and it cripples small businesses because it's great you get the money today, you can pay all your employees and keep everybody around, but what happens in 6 months when you have to start repaying that loan? Has your income grown? because it's not like everybody's making a ton of extra money at the end of the day off of this to repay these loans.
I understand, but again, I know I'm like beating a dull nail here, but instead of a loan, reducing a cost, a pretty hefty one of like payroll tax. But the other thing is alternatively not giving that lifeline and not taking that loan to most small businesses. What's the alternative? 6 months from now, there's no COVID-19, but there's no small businesses and huge unemployment. I mean, I don't know the answer either, but they need to figure that piece out. I'm not worried about Boeing, and I don't want to be crass here. Boeing they'll get a bailout, and hopefully they don't use that money to buy back stock, which is, I know, one of the things they're debating right now. But those big companies get bailed out, and that's important. But the small businesses is really, there's some crazy statistic. 75% of Americans work for a company with less than 150 employees, or some, so whatever it is, right? I might be off a little bit there, but we need to find a way to keep those doors open.
I don't think they have an answer to that. I mean, I can go look for examples and give you some personal perspective, but I've seen plenty of instances where it's actually further crippled a business. So it saves you short term, but long term it cripples you, and ultimately you end up going out of business later versus presently.
It's also possible that huge conglomerates come in and buy them all up because they have so much cash to burn, and the divide between the mega corporations and everyone else becomes even wider.
I think that was in reading more over the weekend about it, that's one of the pieces to be careful of, is that this doesn't become just a major corporation bailout, and that it's how are we going to help the small businesses today and in the future. Like that has to be part of the consideration. Like in reading this morning, everything about what caused this to stall overnight in the Senate is the fact that it's half of this bill is to provide large companies, so Boeing, the airline companies, the hotel companies, all of this, like $500 billion, but with what constraints? Can they continue to buy back stock and grind out their bonuses? Got to get some control around that. They have a much better ability to grow and get better healthier into the future, whereas the small businesses, we're going to lend them the money, and then how are we going to get the money back from them and enable that they survive?
Shortly, we're going to have a presentation about a PowerPoint about this new legislation. So once we have the final regulations and the language is all agreed upon, we are going to put out the impact that this will have to the retirement plans and explain this to our plan sponsors and obviously any participants that want to join. But we'll make sure to build a presentation deck about this and review it with our clients.
As the business owners are saying, how can I structure my plan to help my employees? How can I keep my doors open? Let's not forget that the market is still fluctuating wildly, right? Well, or at least just going down. So I know Jennifer has put together a lot of curriculum, and it's available to clients and non-clients, which is great. And those are happening. I believe there's one tomorrow, right? On Tuesday, the 24th. Is that?
Yep.
What's it? Yep. So I know we're promoting that, and at the very least, it'll give comfort to people that have a 401k to tell them what their options are and to help them make good decisions, right? Because I think sometimes when you see the market, spiraling down, there's a tendency, an emotional tendency, which I understand, to make some choices that might not be good in the long term. So I believe the one tomorrow is about market volatility.
That webinar is going to be like market response to recent news, but I think we should also touch on at least the proposed legislative changes, if not the finalized ones, hopefully by then.
I mean, listen, lastly, I don't like where we are right now, and working from home presents a lot of challenges, but the silver lining is, wearing a sweatshirt every day and jeans, instead of putting a suit on. I mean, it's going to be hard to go back. I mean, Mark, you're looking fantastic with that. I don't know what we call it exactly.
I've had this hanging in the closet for so long. I've been waiting for opportunities to use it. Who knew it took a quarantine and a pandemic for it to come out and be used?